All right, so we just heard the Japanese perspective from Ambassador Endo. Now it's time for us to hear the Philippine perspective from our next keynote speaker. We are very privileged to have with us today the National Security Advisor and the Director General of the National Security Council. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Honorable Eduardo Año.
Excellencies of the Diplomatic Corps, His Excellency Endo Kazuya, Ambassador of Japan, His Excellency Robert Ewing, Acting Ambassador of the United States, Her Excellency Ana Pernilia Perry, Ambassador of Sweden, Secretary Alfredo Pascual of the Philippine Council for Foreign Relations, Ambassador Takiyo Yamada, Executive Director, Japan Institute of International Affairs Center for Global Outreach, Professor Victor Andres Dindo Manhit, President, Strat-Based Institute, former Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, Supreme Court of the Philippines, former Chief of Staff, AP Manny Bautista, my mentor, DDG Nestor Jerico from NSC, ADG Cornelio Valencia from NSC, Rear Admiral, newly promoted Rear Admiral J. Tariela of the Philippine Coast Guard, Admiral Tomohisa Take, the retired 32nd Chief of Staff, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. Panelists and participants of the symposium, officials and representatives from the Philippine national government agencies present, friends and partners from the different diplomatic missions, friends from the private sector, academe, and media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, magandang umaga, ohayo gozaimasu. The Indo-Pacific stands at a strategic inflection point. 10 years after the articulation of the free and open Indo-Pacific, we face intensifying gray zone competition, growing maritime insecurity across regions, and mounting pressures on global supply chains. The maritime domain is no longer peripheral to global stability. It is indispensable to it. Over 60% of global trade moves through Indo-Pacific Sea lanes, while the vast majority of global digital traffic travels through submarine cables beneath these waters. Energy flows, food systems, logistic networks, and financial markets all depend on open and secure maritime routes. When maritime stability is disrupted, the consequences are systemic rather than regional. In addition, the Indo-Pacific is home to some of the world's most biodiverse ecosystems, yet illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing continues to threaten food security, livelihoods, and marine sustainability. Climate change further compounds these vulnerabilities through rising sea levels, warming waters, and coral degradation. For its part, the Philippines is deeply concerned about the escalating maritime challenges that threaten our sovereignty, security, and sustainable development in the West Philippine Sea. We continue to observe illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive or gray zone tactics, including illegal presence, swarming operations, obstruction of lawful resupply missions, collisions and ramming, dangerous maneuvers at sea, water cannoning and laser pointing incidents, militarizations of artificial islands, deployment of maritime militias, resource interference, unilateral employment of domestic regulations over international waters, and other coercive activities designed to alter facts in the water while remaining below the threshold of armed conflict. As National Security Advisor and Chair of the National Task Force for the West Philippine Sea, I witness daily how these challenges unfold in real time, affecting our Coast Guard and Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources personnel, our Navy, and our fisherfolk deprived of livelihood who are operating within our exclusive economic zone. These issues are not abstract. They directly impact our fishermen, our environment, and our national resilience. These interconnected challenges demand collective and sustained actions. Let me offer several imperatives where we can encourage and foster greater alignment and cooperation in maritime governance. First, we must strengthen maritime domain awareness across the Indo-Pacific. Maritime domain awareness must move from aspiration to regional cooperation and integration. Interoperability of systems for shared situational awareness and real-time information exchange are no longer optional. They are indispensable for navigating the complexities of the modern maritime environment. Satellite monitoring, AI-enabled anomaly detection, and data fusion capabilities should be integrated into coherent frameworks that support timely decision-making and coordinated responses. Data fusion centers are crucial for coordinated action. Integrating sensor data, intelligence reports, and open source information for real-time situational awareness. We need to establish a common operating picture across the Indo-Pacific for a broader, more comprehensive, and more integrated maritime domain awareness and response. We must see the whole picture, not in pieces, not in parts, but as one coherent whole. For smaller maritime states, capacity building is essential. They need to leverage and partner with more advanced and like-minded countries in order to gain access to advanced surveillance technologies, sustained technical training, and interoperable systems, all of which are the imperatives to transform vulnerability into resilience, and resilience into credible deterrence. Without long-term investment in capacity and expertise, even the clearest legal rights become difficult to enforce on the ground. Second, partnerships remain indispensable in this effort. Through bilateral, multilateral, and minilateral engagements with the United States, Australia, Japan, India, and the European Union and other like-minded countries, the Philippines has enhanced operational capabilities, improved interoperability, and strengthened deterrence. Joint patrols, coordinated presence operations, and expanded defense cooperation have yielded tangible improvements in maritime awareness and readiness. Minilateral arrangements, in particular, provide agile and focused collaboration that builds trust while reinforcing long-term resilience against coercion. Towards this, bigger and more advanced nations must take the lead in bolstering our MDA, response capabilities, defense posture, and tools and assets to foster trust and efficiency, enabling us to project strength collectively while building long-term resilience against coercion. Third, we must fortify economic cooperation and economic resilience because they are pragmatic paths to a free and open Indo-Pacific. Maritime security undeniably extends beyond defense cooperation. It is inseparable from economic security. This is attainable if we deepen economic integration to strengthen our position in global supply chains and its influence in trade negotiations. Energy transit routes, semiconductor supply chains, port infrastructure, and undersea cables form part of a broader maritime ecosystem that underpins global prosperity. Disruptions at sea reverberate across economies, strengthening supply chain resilience, protecting critical undersea infrastructure, and investing in quality connectivity are therefore security imperatives. Fourth, sustainable cooperation must be built on pillars of transparency, equality of benefits, and unwavering respect for sovereign rights. Yes, we can promote peace and mutual gains without eroding legal impediments or entitlements. This could include transparent point or transparent joint scientific research on marine biodiversity and climate impacts, coordinated efforts for resource conservation, like sustainable fisheries management and multilateral environmental protection initiatives under legal and inclusive frameworks that allow us to fully develop our blue economy. In the face of sustained aggressions and belligerent actions, our response has been firm, measured, and anchored in law. One of the approaches we have adopted is what we describe as strategic transparency. And nations in the Indo-Pacific can draw important learnings from our experiences. By publicly documenting unsafe maritime conduct, releasing verified footage, and engaging international media and briefing partners and allies, we raise reputational costs and deny coercive actors the advantage of ambiguity. Transparency mobilizes collective supports for the rule-based order and ensured accountability. In the gray zone environment, where ambiguity is exploited, clarity and truth as vital instruments of deterrence. Along these efforts, there is a need to actively involve non-military actors, such as think tanks, academia, and civil society organizations. They play a vital role in fact-based transparency, countering disinformation, and building cross-border understanding. Public diplomacy and Track 1.5, Track 2, and other maritime dialogues should also be institutionalized. They are critical for maintaining communication channels and shared norms. Finally, all these efforts must remain firmly anchored in international law. The 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea remains the foundation of maritime order. The West Philippine Sea transcends bilateral concerns. It is a critical and decisive test for the international community's resolve to uphold the UNCLOS as the framework for resolving maritime disputes and to defend the binding force of the 2016 arbitral award in the face of coercive challenges. What hangs in the balance is nothing less than the credibility of the international rule-based order. The arbitral award is clear. It invalidated China's illegal 9 and now 10-line claim, or the expansive maritime claims unsupported by UNCLOS, affirming the Philippines' sovereign rights within its EEZ and clarifying the legal status of certain maritime features. More fundamentally, it reinforced the principle that disputes must be resolved through law rather than force. As such, any arrangement that implicitly legitimizes unlawful claims or rewards coercive behavior undermines regional stability and weakens the rule-based system. The Philippines will not support mechanisms that dilute sovereign rights affirmed by UNCLOS and the arbitral award. Effective dispute management must prioritize confidence-building measures that promote stability while preserving legal entitlements. As ASEAN chair, the Philippines will work to ensure that maritime security remains central to ASEAN centrality. We will explore mechanisms that enable a more coherent, coordinated, and integrated approach to maritime governance. We will advance practical cooperation in maritime domain awareness, strengthen maritime exercises, and reinforce principled language anchored in international law. ASEAN centrality must be principled and grounded in respect for sovereignty and the peaceful settlement of disputes. Developments beyond our region reinforce the urgency of safeguarding the maritime domain. Disruptions in key choke points elsewhere, militarization in contested waters, and heightened cross-strait sensitivities demonstrate that maritime instability anywhere has global implications. No region is insulated from these dynamics. The defense of the maritime domain is ultimately the defense of global stability. When the seas are secure, the rules that sustain peace and commerce remain strong. The experience in the West Philippine Sea reminds us that international law must be operational, not rhetorical. Maritime security is a collective good that no single state can safeguard alone. The Indo-Pacific will remain free and open only if it remains governed by law, sustained by cooperation, and protected through shared responsibility. Let us therefore move from one vision to implementation, from principles to operational cooperation, and from shared concerns to shared commitment. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay tayong lahat.
I asked the secretary to stay on stage for a quick photo opportunity. May we also invite the ambassador, Endo Kazuya, and Professor Manhit, please, for a quick photo opportunity. All right. And together with and okay.